Wayyiqra, Leviticus chapter 13. And Yahuah spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying, When a man has on the skin of his body a swelling, a scab, or a bright spot, and it shall become on the skin of his body like a leprous infection, then he shall be brought to Aaron the Kohen, or to one of his sons the Kohanim. And the Kohen shall look at the infection on the skin of the body, and if the hair on the infection has turned white, and the infection appears to be deeper than the skin of his body, it is a leprous infection. And the Kohen shall look at him and pronounce him unclean. But if the bright spot is white on the skin of his body, and does not appear to be deeper than the skin, and its hair has not turned white, then the Kohen shall shut up the infected one 7 days. And the Kohen shall look at him on the 7th day and see if the infection appears to be as it was, and the infection has not spread on the skin, then the Kohen shall shut him up another 7 days. And the Kohen shall look at him again on the 7th day and see if the infection has darkened, and the infection has not spread on the skin. Then the Kohen shall pronounce him clean. It is a scab, and he shall wash his garments and be clean. But if the scab spreads further over the skin, after he has been seen by the Kohen for his cleansing, he shall be seen by the Kohen again. And the Kohen shall look and see if the scab has spread on the skin, then the Kohen shall pronounce him unclean. It is leprosy. When the infection of leprosy is on a man, then he shall be brought to the Kohen. And the Kohen shall look and see if the swelling on the skin is white, and it has turned the hair white, and there is a spot of raw flesh in the swelling. It is an old leprosy on the skin of his body, and the Kohen shall pronounce him unclean. He does not shut him up, for he is unclean. And if leprosy breaks out all over the skin, and the leprosy shall cover all the skin of the infected one, from his head to his foot, wherever the Kohen looks, then the Kohen shall look and see if the leprosy has covered all his body. He shall pronounce the infected one clean. It has all turned white. He is clean. But the day raw flesh appears on him, he is unclean. And the Kohen shall look at the raw flesh and pronounce him to be unclean. The raw flesh is unclean. It is leprosy. Or when the raw flesh changes and turns white again, he shall come to the Kohen. And the Kohen shall look at him and see if the infection has turned white, then the Kohen shall pronounce the infected one clean. He is clean. And when the body has a boil in the skin, and it is healed, and in the place of the boil there comes a white swelling or a bright spot, reddish white, then it shall be seen by the Kohen. And the Kohen shall look and see if it appears deeper than the skin, and its hair has turned white. The Kohen shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous infection which has broken out of the boil. But if the Kohen looks at it and sees no white hairs in it, and it is not deeper than the skin, but has faded, then the Kohen shall shut him up 7 days. And if it has spread further over the skin, then the Kohen shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous infection. But if the bright spot stays in its place, it has not spread, it is the scar of the boil, and the Kohen shall pronounce him clean. Or when the body receives a burn on its skin by fire, and the raw flesh of the burn shall become a bright spot, reddish white or white, then the Kohen shall look at it and see if the hair of the bright spot has turned white, and it appears deeper than the skin. It is leprosy broken out in the burn. And the Kohen shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous infection. But if the Kohen looks at it and sees there are no white hairs in the bright spot, and it is not deeper than the skin, but has faded, then the Kohen shall shut him up 7 days. And the Kohen shall look at him on the 7th day. If it spreads further over the skin, then the Kohen shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous infection. But if the bright spot stays in its place and has not spread on the skin, but has faded, it is a swelling from the burn, and the Kohen shall pronounce him clean, for it is the scar from the burn. And when a man or a woman has an infection on the head or in the beard, then the Kohen shall look at the infection and see if it appears deeper than the skin, and there is thin yellow hair in it. Then the Kohen shall pronounce him unclean. It is an eruption, a leprosy of the head or beard. But when the Kohen looks at the infection of the eruption and sees that it does not appear deeper than the skin, and there is no black hair in it, then the Kohen shall shut up the infection of the eruption 7 days. And on the 7th day the Kohen shall look at the infection and see if the eruption has not spread, and there is no yellow hair in it, and the eruption does not appear deeper than the skin. Then he shall shave himself, but the eruption he does not shave. And the Kohen shall shut up the eruption another 7 days. And on the 7th day the Kohen shall look at the eruption and see if the eruption has not spread over the skin and does not appear deeper than the skin. Then the Kohen shall pronounce him clean, and he shall wash his garments, and he shall be clean. But if the eruption spreads further over the skin after his cleansing, then the Kohen shall look at him and see. If the eruption has spread over the skin, the Kohen need not seek for yellow hair. He is unclean. But if the eruption appears to have stayed and there is black hair grown up in it, the eruption has healed. He is clean, and the Kohen shall pronounce him clean. And when a man or a woman has bright spots on the skin of the body, white, bright spots, then the Kohen shall look and see. If the bright spots on the skin of the body are dull white, it is a white spot that grows on the skin. He is clean. And when a man loses the hair of his head, he is bald. He is clean. And if the hair has fallen from his forehead, he is bald on the forehead. He is clean. And when there is on the bald head or bald forehead a reddish-white infection, it is leprosy breaking out on his bald head or his bald forehead. And the Kohen shall look at it and see. If the swelling of the infection is reddish-white on his bald head or on his bald forehead, as the appearance of leprosy on the skin of the body, he is a leprous man. He is unclean. The Kohen shall pronounce him unclean. Without fail, his infection is on his head. As for the leper who has the infection, his garments are torn, and his head is uncovered, and he has to cover his upper lip and cry, "Unclean! Unclean!" He is unclean. All the days he has the infection, he is unclean. He is unclean, and he dwells alone. His dwelling place is outside the camp. And when a garment has an infection of leprosy in it, in a woolen garment or in a linen garment, or in the warp or in the weft of linen or wool, or in leather or in any leather work, and the infection shall be greenish or reddish in the garment or in the leather or in the warp or in the weft or in any leather object, it is an infection of leprosy and shall be shown to the Kohen. And the Kohen shall look at the infection and shut up the infection 7 days. And he shall look at the infection on the 7th day, and when the infection has spread in the garment, or in the warp, or in the weft, or in the leather, or any leather work, the infection is an active leprosy. It is unclean. And he shall burn that garment, or the warp, or the weft, in wool, or in linen, or any leather object in which the infection is, for it is an active leprosy. It is burned with fire. But if the Kohen looks and sees that the infection has not spread in the garment, or in the warp, or in the weft, or in any leather object, then the Kohen shall give command, and they shall wash that in which the infection is, and he shall shut it up another 7 days. And the Kohen shall look at the infection after it has been washed, and see if the infection has not changed in its appearance. Though the infection has not spread, it is unclean, and burn it in the fire. It is eaten away in its inside or outside. And if the Kohen shall look and see that the infection has faded after washing it, then he shall tear it out of the garment, or out of the warp, or out of the weft, or out of the leather. And if it is still seen in the garment, or in the warp, or in the weft, or in any leather object, it is a spreading infection. Burn it with fire, that in which the infection is. And if you wash the garment, or the warp, or the weft, or any leather object, if the infection has disappeared from it, then it shall be washed a second time and shall be clean. This is the Torah of the infection of leprosy in a garment of wool or linen, or in the warp, or in the weft, or in any leather object, to pronounce it clean, or to pronounce it unclean. Wayyiqra, Leviticus chapter 14. And Yahuah spoke to Moshe, saying, This shall be the Torah of the leper for the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought to the Kohen, and the Kohen shall go out of the camp, and the Kohen shall look and see if the leprosy is healed in the leper. Then the Kohen shall command, and he shall take for him who is to be cleansed 2 live and clean birds, and cedar wood, and scarlet, and hyssop. And the Kohen shall command, and he shall kill one of the birds in an earthen vessel over running water. Let him take the live bird, and the cedar wood, and the scarlet, and the hyssop, and dip them, and the live bird, in the blood of the bird that was killed over the running water. And he shall sprinkle it 7 times on him who is to be cleansed from the leprosy, and shall pronounce him clean, and shall let the live bird loose in the open field. And he who is to be cleansed shall wash his garments, and shall shave off all his hair, and wash himself in water, and shall be clean. Then after that he comes into the camp, but shall stay outside his tent 7 days. And on the 7th day it shall be that he shaves all the hair off his head, and his beard, and his eyebrows, even all his hair he shaves off. And he shall wash his garments, and wash his body in water, and shall be clean. And on the 8th day he takes 2 male lambs, perfect ones, and 1 ewe lamb, a year old, a perfect one, and 3/10 parts of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, and 1 log of oil. And the Kohen who is cleansing shall present the man who is to be cleansed with these before Yahuah at the door of the tent of appointment. And the Kohen shall take 1 male lamb and bring it as a guilt offering, and the log of oil, and wave them as a wave offering before Yahuah. And he shall slaughter the lamb in the place where he slaughters the sin offering and the burnt offering, in a Kodesh place. For the guilt offering, like the sin offering, belongs to the Kohen. It is most Kodesh. And the Kohen shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering, and the Kohen shall put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. And the Kohen shall take some of the log of oil, and pour it into the palm of his own left hand. And the Kohen shall dip his right finger in the oil that is in his left hand, and shall sprinkle some of the oil with his finger 7 times before Yahuah. And of the rest of the oil in his hand the Kohen puts some on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the blood of the guilt offering. And the rest of the oil that is in the Kohen's hand he puts on the head of him who is to be cleansed. And the Kohen shall make atonement for him before Yahuah. And the Kohen shall make the sin offering, and make atonement for him who is to be cleansed from his uncleanness. Then afterwards he slaughters the burnt offering. And the Kohen shall offer the burnt offering and the grain offering on the altar. And the Kohen shall make atonement for him, and he shall be clean. But if he is poor and is unable to afford it, then he shall take 1 male lamb as a guilt offering to be waved, to make atonement for him, and 1/10 part of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, and a log of oil, and 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, such as he is able to afford, and 1 shall be a sin offering, and the other a burnt offering. And he shall bring them to the Kohen on the 8th day for his cleansing, to the door of the tent of appointment before Yahuah. And the Kohen shall take the lamb of the guilt offering and the log of oil, and the Kohen shall wave them as a wave offering before Yahuah. And he shall slaughter the lamb of the guilt offering, and the Kohen shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering, and put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. Then the Kohen pours some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand, and the Kohen shall sprinkle with his right finger some of the oil that is in his left hand 7 times before Yahuah. And the Kohen shall put some of the oil that is in his hand on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the place of the blood of the guilt offering. And the rest of the oil that is in the Kohen's hand he puts on the head of him who is to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before Yahuah. And he shall prepare one of the turtle doves or young pigeons, such as he is able to afford, that which he is able to afford, the one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, with the grain offering. And the Kohen shall make atonement for him who is to be cleansed before Yahuah. This is the Torah for one who had an infection of leprosy, who is unable to afford for his cleansing. And Yahuah spoke to Moshe and to Adon, saying, when you come into the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as a possession, and I put a plague of leprosy in a house in the land of your possession, then shall the one who owns the house come and inform the Kohen, saying, it seems to me that there is some plague in the house. And the Kohen shall command, and they shall empty the house before the Kohen goes in to look at the plague, so that all that is in the house is not made unclean. And after that the Kohen goes in to look at the house. And he shall look at the plague and see, if the plague is on the walls of the house with sunken places, greenish or reddish, which appear to be deep in the wall, then the Kohen shall go out of the house to the door of the house and shut up the house 7 days. And the Kohen shall come again on the 7th day and look and see, if the plague has spread on the walls of the house. Then the Kohen shall command, and they shall remove the stones with the plague in them, and they shall throw them outside the city into an unclean place, while he lets the house be scraped inside all around, and the dust that they scrape off they shall pour out in an unclean place outside the city. And they shall take other stones and put them in the place of those stones, and take other mortar and plaster the house. And if the plague comes back and breaks out in the house, after he has removed the stones, after he has scraped the house, and after it is plastered, then the Kohen shall come and look and see if the plague has spread in the house. It is an active leprosy in the house. It is unclean. And he shall break down the house, its stones, and its timbers, and all the plaster of the house, and he shall bring them outside the city to an unclean place. And he who goes into the house all the days while it is shut up becomes unclean until evening. And he who lies down in the house has to wash his garments, and he who eats in the house has to wash his garments. However, if the Kohen indeed comes in and looks at it and sees that the plague has not spread in the house after the house was plastered, then the Kohen shall pronounce the house clean, because the plague is healed. And to cleanse the house he shall take 2 birds, and cedar wood, and scarlet, and hyssop. And he shall kill one of the birds in an earthen vessel over running water. And he shall take the cedar wood, and the hyssop, and the scarlet, and the live bird, and dip them in the blood of the slain bird and in the running water, and shall sprinkle the house 7 times. He shall thus cleanse the house with the blood of the bird, and the running water, and the live bird, and with the cedar wood, and with the hyssop, and with the scarlet. And he shall let the live bird loose outside the city in the open field, and shall make atonement for the house, and it shall be clean. This is the Torah for any infection of leprosy and eruption, and for leprosy of a garment, and of a house, and for a swelling, and for a scab, and for a bright spot, to teach when it is unclean and when it is clean. This is the Torah of leprosy.